What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some highlights from the opening show for Summer Games Fest, bringing within all sorts of announcements and updates to various games in various states of development. But seeing how that show is, as pretty much always these days, almost 3 hours long, I decided to go ahead and condense that for some people and focus on things that are important to the channel at the very least. And with that in mind, I'm definitely not going to be covering every single thing that was mentioned in the show, mostly just talking about what is of interest to me. And to that end, if you want to drop anything down in the comments about any of these or anything you find particularly interesting, certainly feel free to do so. What's more though, if you are unaware, Summer Games Fest is not just one show, but rather it is a full weekend of events. In fact, notable events, one going on today being the Future Games Show, which we should be getting a reveal from Owlcat Games for, alongside the Xbox Showcase on Sunday. So still plenty of things to go, and I'll probably cover things there separately, or at the very least Owlcat's announcements and the Xbox Showcase, as I will be joining Owlcat on a live stream following what they've got to discuss. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into some of this interesting stuff. So kicking it off with the first announcement they made, or at least the one most interesting to me, we've got Mortal Shell 2, sequel of course to Mortal Shell, a Souls-like title, which may just be the inspiration I need to finally get around to checking out Mortal Shell, which basically sees you inhabiting different bodies and using them to, of course, harness the individual abilities of each. In the case of this particular game, though, it does seem to be a standalone sequel, so you won't necessarily need to have played the first one, which is always helpful, honestly. But as no doubt just this list alone will show you, Souls-likes are certainly a bit of a crowded genre these days. Either way, this is a game we can expect out sometime in 2026. Now, the second title I want to talk about is a little bit of a mystery to me, in the sense that I'm not entirely sure what they're going for, but it's called Chronicles Medieval. Now, what I kind of got out of the trailer and some of what I looked up on their Steam page is that it's going to put you in the role of a character in a dynamic medieval sandbox, as they call it, which, to me at least, brings to mind something akin to things like Kenshi as an example. So, to be blunt, I'm not entirely sold on this one. We'll see what they have to offer, but in any event, this one's launching into early access come 2026. Third up, we've got the announcement of Code Vein 2. Another Souls-like title, a sequel to, of course, Code Vein, which sees you in the role of vampiric creatures who siphon blood from their enemies to activate their own abilities, with the original releasing all the way back in, I believe it was 2019, so a fair little while ago. I had heard some mixed things about the original. It's not a game I have personally played much of, but kind of like Mortal Shell, if it's interesting enough, I'll go back and play the first one before I dive into this one. But Code Vein 2 promises to tell a tale across time that spans both present and the past as you search for clues about the world's destruction. Something to keep an eye on at the very least. This is another one that was just kind of given the broad window of 2026. Our next title is a slightly more humorous one. If you've watched the channel much, I tend to like to break up games every once in a while with something a little more lighthearted, which is certainly the case, I would say, for Mouse P.I. for Hire, due out sometime later this year in 2025. And I would say, just looking at it, it takes a lot of clear inspiration from 1930s cartoons, and the timing around this releasing and a certain IP entering the public domain a while back, I'm sure, is probably related information. But either way, this looks to be a sort of humorous FPS title more than anything else, and honestly, it just looks funny, and that's enough for me. In a very different tone, our next entry is actually Atomic Heart 2. Atomic Heart was an interesting title, releasing back in 2023. It put you in the role of, I believe it was P3, as a fantastical utopia suddenly and very violently descended into a dystopia, with mutated monsters and robots galore going haywire and us having to fight our way to the bottom of it. And Atomic Heart 2 looks to be promising much of the same, but of course with improved systems, which is probably for the best, as Atomic Heart itself was fun, but, had some rough points, which probably isn't a huge surprise given that I believe it was developer Mundfish's first title, their debut entry. I'm not exactly sure if they've done anything else, so don't hold me to that, but I believe that was the case. I don't know how reliable this is, but just from what they've shown in this trailer and announcement, it certainly looks to be a slightly more open experience, which is, hopefully going to be pretty good, as the open area of Atomic Heart 1 was honestly a little underwhelming. That said, no particular release date or release window on Atomic Heart 2, so I expect it's not exactly soon. Now, bizarrely though, alongside Atomic Heart 2, they also announced an MMORPG set in the same universe called The Cube, where you are on a cube that is constantly shifting and changing and adding in some dynamic elements. That seems a little bold, and I'm not terribly interested in it, but, thought it was worth mentioning, I guess. Following on from that, we then have another look at Onimusha, Way of the Sword. I am very much so admittedly not up to date on Onimusha. In fact, most of what I know of it came from the very little that I watched one of my older biological brothers playing it when I was much younger. But as it looks to be an action RPG of some description, that's clearly the type of thing I tend to cover, and so it's certainly on my radar. But again, this one also looks like it'll be a while, as there is no release date for it, and this was mostly just a gameplay trailer. Keeping it moving though, we got another look at Mafia Old Country. This one, not all that long ago, got a release date of August 8th, and this was, of course, mostly just marketing to hype up that release that is really just right around the corner here in about 2 months. This looks to be, from what I understand, a relatively linear third-person action-adventure going over the origins of organized crime in, of course, 1900s Sicily. And I think that's important to mention because it looks like you don't need to necessarily be familiar with the other Mafia games in order to play this one, which is probably going to work out for me, given how I also haven't played those and would like to play this one. Our next entry is actually a DLC for a much-loved game that released a while back called Lies of P. This one being a DLC they've been working on for quite some time called Overture. This was announced and then released almost immediately, so this DLC is out now if you'd like to play it. Right after they announced it, they sent me an email with a key to this DLC, as I had previously reviewed the actual base game. It's probably going to be a little while before I can actually take a look at this one, as this is a very busy week for me, as you might be able to tell, but either way, I will get around to it. Coming up towards the end here, we then have Dying Light The Beast, which releases on August 22nd and brought us some gameplay of the title finally, after hearing about it a few times previously. Now, this one is interesting to me because if you remember my review of Dying Light 2, which happened quite some time ago, I didn't really love it despite really enjoying the first Dying Light. Dying Light 2 was honestly a bit of a letdown in comparison because I think it lost a lot of what made that game so interesting in the first entry. And I'm hoping then that this one is, a bit of a return to form in terms of the things that I actually enjoyed about the first title, especially since they're bringing back Kyle Crane to get to the bottom of everything that's happened to him, basically. So we'll see if it works out for him. I'm excited to jump into it at the very least. Third from the end, we then have Wuchang Fallen Feathers, another Souls-like action RPG, this one releasing even sooner though, on July 23rd. This one bringing us some gameplay and some looks at it. Looks like a beautiful game. I'm definitely interested in checking it out. It's very much so up my alley. But again, there's just a lot of these games these days, so we'll see if it manages to do anything unique. Outside of course, just looking really good. Next up, we've got Stranger Than Heaven, the sort of title reveal for the game that we had previously seen known as Project Century from RGG. There was no date release for this, but it looks like the Project Century codename was relatively apt, as it looks like Stranger Than Heaven takes place across, at the very least, the early 1900s in Japan. And that's honestly most of my interest right there. That's not exactly a time period you see a lot of exploration of, especially when it comes to Japan, actually. And I'm very interested just in taking a look at it simply on that note. And then finally, to bring this to a close, we've got a look at Resident Evil 9 Requiem, which is supposed to be releasing in February 2026. Now, I wanted to mention this one specifically because while I am very much so not up to date on my Resident Evil, it's not, honestly, in many ways a genre that is terribly interesting to me. But in the case of this particular one, just going by the trailer and what they've shown off here, it seems like they're trying to go a little bit of a different direction there, which is certainly not unheard of for the Resident Evil series. It does tend to be a little all over the place. And just the presentation of this one in particular caught my eye a lot more than it normally would have, And so while I'm certainly not guaranteeing I'll wind up taking a look at it, it's certainly on my radar at the very least. But at least for me, that was everything of interest that was shown off at the Summer Games opening day, if you will, but do remember there is plenty more to talk about, both Saturday happening today and Sunday, of course, with the big Xbox showcase, which tends to be relevant to me as a PC channel, more so than a lot of other stuff. So I'm sure we'll have plenty yet to talk about, and then sometime this following week I should have a video kind of going over what my plans for my next few reviews are after that. But for today, that's pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.